Have you ever felt as if the world is deliberately testing you? A message ignites your anger, a word throws you off balance, an event unravels your entire day. But what if I told you we can turn these very moments into triumph, not because the world changes, but because the mind does. We are not victims of our emotions unless we choose to be. In this video, we'll explore how to train the mind so that we are no longer ruled by emotion, but respond with reason and virtue, a core Stoic discipline that makes us strong, sovereign, and unshakable. 1. Reaction is instinct. Response is power. Each day we encounter countless unexpected situations, a disapproving glance, a harsh remark, a minor accident on the road, or even just a negative comment on social media. These stimuli strike directly at our emotions, causing many to react on impulse. Anger, sadness, anxiety, or fear. This is reaction, an ancient biological mechanism that dates back to when humans lived in the wild. Reactions evolved to protect us from danger. When facing a threat, the body releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, triggering the fight or flight response. In primitive environments, this was vital. Survival hinged on split-second decisions. But in the modern world, where most threats are no longer life or death, this reflex often leads to unwanted consequences. For instance, when someone harshly criticizes us, instinct may push us to retaliate immediately, without thought, without pause. That reaction can escalate conflict, damage relationships, and leave us with regret or guilt. In such cases, the instinct meant to protect us becomes the very thing that causes harm. Response stands in contrast to reaction. It doesn't come from instinct. It comes from conscious choice. When we respond, we don't allow emotion to take the reins. Instead, we observe it, name it, understand its source, and then act based on reason, values, and long-term purpose. This is a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy, to discern what is within our control and what lies beyond it. The Stoic does not suppress emotion, but neither do they act under its command. They treat emotion as signal, not as directive. When anger arises, they don't deny it or bury it. They simply acknowledge, I am angry. Then they create a pause between emotion and action, giving reason the time to speak. That pause, even if only a few seconds long, carries profound weight. It is the boundary between unconscious reaction and intentional behavior. In that fleeting moment, a person can break free from emotional captivity and choose to act as their better self. Those who live by reaction are swept away by circumstance. Traffic stirs their rage. Being ignored breeds sorrow. Pressure triggers anxiety. Their inner world is ruled by outer events, leading to fragility and unrest. By contrast, the one who chooses response still feels emotion, but does not surrender to it. They possess the ability to hold themselves, not through suppression, but through mindful direction. This ability to respond is not innate. It must be trained. And like any skill, it begins with small steps. A question when irritation flares. What's really bothering me right now? A deep breath before making a crucial decision. A moment to journal our emotions instead of lashing out at someone else. Response is the clearest sign of spiritual maturity. It marks the shift from living by impulse to living by awareness and wisdom. This is why the Stoics so highly valued calm and self-command. To them, true power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering the self. In a modern world of constant stimulation, the ability to respond instead of react is an essential form of mental armor. It prevents us from becoming emotional hostages, shields us from the chaos outside, and preserves our inner peace, even amidst disorder. An action born of reaction may resolve the immediate problem, but often leaves lasting damage. A well-considered response, however, addresses the root, while protecting relationships, dignity, and personal values. Response, then, is more than communication. It is the manifestation of inner strength. In the end, the difference between reaction and response is the difference between being controlled and being in command of your life. Reaction is easy. Anyone can do it. But response is the harder path, and the one that leads to inner freedom, resilience, and steadiness in a turbulent world. 2. The pause, a realm of inner freedom. In the rapid pace of modern life, everything moves at breakneck speed. People are often swept up in instant reactions to external stimuli. From negative news headlines, hostile comments online, to pressures at work and in personal relationships. It is precisely in such an environment that the act of pausing, even for a few seconds, becomes a quiet revolution of the inner world. The pause is the brief space between a stimulus and the action that follows. It is not mechanical delay, but a moment in which one can choose not to react by instinct, but to act through reason. In Stoic philosophy, this moment is the emblem of spiritual freedom, where a person is no longer ruled by circumstance, but begins to govern themselves. The defining trait of the pause is that it gives us time to reflect inwardly before we respond. When insulted, the instinct for self-defense might urge us to strike back immediately. But if we pause, even for just a few seconds, and ask ourselves, what is truly happening inside me right now? We may see that anger is simply a wave of emotion. It arrives, and it will pass. That emotion is not a command, and we are under no obligation to obey it. The Stoic understands that while emotions are natural phenomena, acting on them is a choice. The pause opens the space between the two. In that space, reason can enter, with clarity, composure, and dignity. Pausing is not a complex technique. It begins with simple acts, like taking a deep breath, remaining silent for a few seconds, or shifting awareness to the sensations in the body. Though simple, these actions sever the chain of impulsive reactions and awaken inner awareness. What am I doing? What do I truly want from this situation? What choice aligns with the person I aspire to be? Practicing the pause regularly helps us build the habit of conscious choice rather than being driven by emotional inertia. A once short-tempered person can learn to stay calm. A once overly sensitive person can develop self-awareness. Over time, behavior is no longer shaped by fleeting emotions, but guided by firm life principles. To pause does not mean to do nothing. It is a deliberate act, a step back to advance more wisely. Just as a soldier does not charge into the battlefield without knowing the terrain, the Stoic practitioner chooses to pause to see the full landscape before acting. This is not weakness, it is the mark of self-mastery. In tense situations, the pause breaks negative cycles. When two people argue, if even one chooses silence for a few seconds, the entire dynamic can shift. When a hurtful word is on the verge of being spoken, a brief silence can preserve a relationship. When negative emotions surge, simply pausing to breathe can restore balance. The pause is also a time to reconnect with core values. When we're hurt, emotion tempts us to hurt in return. But in the pause, we may remember what we truly value, perhaps compassion, kindness, or a desire to build rather than destroy. From there, our response becomes not only rational, but humane. For the Stoic, the pause is not a luxury. It is an essential part of living consciously. Creating space for reason to shape behavior is what allows them to uphold dignity when insulted, remain grounded when threatened, and act rightly even when emotions flare. The pause is the foundation of inner freedom. True freedom is not doing whatever we want. It is not doing what we will later regret. When a person is no longer governed by impulse, they become more self-possessed, more composed, and more profound in every moment. This is also what separates one who lives by reflex from one who lives with awareness. The former is trapped in emotional cycles, constantly pressured, often regretting their lack of control. The latter, through the power to stop, reflect, and choose, builds a life of steadiness, trustworthiness, and fewer regrets. The pause does not change the outside world, but it changes how we engage with it. And in that shift lies a deep inner transformation, a freedom that cannot be taken no matter the circumstance. 3. Cultivating awareness, speaking with the self. One of the core principles of Stoicism is that a person must learn to befriend their own mind before one can govern behavior or respond to the external world. They must first build a proper relationship with their inner world, and that relationship begins with a simple yet powerful act: communicating with oneself. Self-communication is not merely silent thinking or inner monologue. It is the process of observing, analyzing, and questioning our emotions, behaviors, and beliefs. When practiced regularly, this leads to self-awareness, the foundation from which we respond with intention rather than react impulsively. In daily life, we constantly absorb stimuli from our environment: praise, criticism, failure, injustice, risk, pressure. These stimuli often give rise to strong emotions: joy, anger, anxiety, disappointment. Without self-awareness, such emotions quickly dictate our actions, causing us to react without control. The Stoic does not deny the presence of emotion. They understand that emotion is the natural response of a human being to reality. Yet they also believe that emotion is not truth, and certainly not what defines who we are. To attain self-mastery, the first step is to observe emotion with neutrality and without judgment. Then to ask, where is this emotion coming from? Is it truly rooted in something valid? Is it worthy of being acted upon? This process of inner inquiry is a form of internal dialogue, where reason plays the role of guide and emotion is the data to be examined. This is also how the Stoic trains awareness, not by allowing emotion to lead, but by using reason to illuminate behavior. A simple yet effective technique often used by the Stoics is daily journaling, writing down what occurred, the emotions that accompanied it, and how one responded. Allows a person to reflect on themselves as an outside observer. Through this, they uncover ineffective behavioral patterns, irrational thoughts, and gain the chance to gradually realign in a better direction. The journal is not a place to complain. It is a tool for self-observation and inner growth. In addition to writing, Stoics also practice positive self-dialogue, especially in times of stress. Rather than letting the mind drift with worry or anger, they actively speak to themselves with clear affirmations. This is beyond my control. I don't need to respond right away. Or, I have the strength to endure this without compromising my character. The way we speak to ourselves not only shapes our immediate emotional state, it also forms our core beliefs about who we are. If a person regularly blames, criticizes, or judges themselves with harsh words, they gradually reinforce a sense of helplessness and worthlessness. Conversely, if they use honest, constructive, and empowering inner language, they build confidence, resilience, and inner peace. The ability to communicate with oneself also plays a vital role in defining one's values. The Stoic believes that a person must be clear about what matters most to them: honor, integrity, compassion, or resilience. Only by knowing what we truly hold dear can we make decisions that align with the person we aim to become. And to do that, self-dialogue is indispensable. Another method for deepening awareness is practicing real-time self-observation. When a strong emotion arises, instead of acting on it immediately, the Stoic pauses to acknowledge their inner state. I am angry. I feel anxious. They do not rush to act. They simply identify the feeling as if watching from the outside, without hastily labeling it as right or wrong. That awareness is the first step toward the more reasoned response. Beyond observing emotions, the Stoic also takes time to examine their beliefs and assumptions. They ask, where did this belief come from? Is it still valid in my current context? Is there a deeper or more rational perspective? By bringing unconscious assumptions to light, they dismantle internal obstacles and open new pathways to engage with life more wisely. Through the continuous practice of self-awareness and communication with the self, the Stoic constantly refines behavior, thought, and response toward progress. They do not expect perfection, but they commit to improvement, little by little, day by day. And it all begins by looking inward, listening to the inner voice, and building a relationship with oneself that is honest and accountable. 4. Reframing. Not changing reality, but changing perception. Life rarely unfolds exactly as we wish. Events beyond our control happen constantly. Losing a job, being misunderstood, failing, falling ill, or facing personal conflict. In confronting such situations, what separates the easily defeated from the resilient lies not in the event itself, but in how they interpret it. In Stoic philosophy, the ability to reframe, known as reframing, is a core discipline. It is the practice of changing one's subjective view of an objective event. Instead of letting negative emotions dictate their initial interpretation, the Stoic chooses a new mental frame, one that allows them to approach the situation with calm, clarity, and reason. Epictetus once said, "It's not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." This reflects the Stoic view on the relationship between reality and perception. The same circumstance can trigger vastly different responses, depending solely on how we choose to see it. For example, being rejected in a job interview can be interpreted in two ways: as proof of failure and inadequacy, or as an opportunity to learn, adjust, and prepare better next. The external event remains unchanged, but the internal outcome varies entirely based on how it is defined. Reframing does not mean denying pain or painting over reality. The Stoic does not live in illusion. They do not deny the existence of hardship. Rather, they consciously choose an interpretation that is more useful, more stable, one that channels reason over emotional impulse. A classic Stoic practice is premeditatio malorum, the mental rehearsal of adversity. When one prepares for life's uncertainty, they are more equipped to accept unforeseen events as part of the natural order. When adversity does arrive, they reframe. This isn't a catastrophe. It's something I foresaw, and I can meet it with equanimity. Reframing is also useful in communication, where misunderstandings arise easily. If someone acts coldly toward us, our first reaction might be to feel offended, but with a pause and a reframing, we might consider other possibilities. Perhaps they are under personal stress or facing pressure we don't see. Broadening our view lessens anger and opens the door to empathy. One of the most profound forms of reframing is turning adversity into a chance for inner development. The Stoic sees value in difficulty. They believe that it is in hardship that we reveal resilience, patience, and wisdom. When challenges arise, they don't ask, "Why me?" but rather, "What can I learn from this?" The situation remains the same, but perception evolves, and that is the essence of self-mastery. Reframing also eases anxiety and centers the mind in the present. When facing uncertainty, The mind tends to spiral into worst-case scenarios, but by seeing the full picture, or by comparing the situation to worse alternatives, we realize the current issue is not as dire as imagined. This mindset doesn't erase difficulty, but it makes it lighter, more manageable. The practice of reframing requires internal honesty. The Stoic does not cover negative feelings with hollow positivity. They identify emotions clearly, then consciously shift their response by asking, "Am I viewing this objectively? Is there another way to understand this? What part of this can I control?" By consistently training this reframing ability, the practitioner develops a flexible mental framework, not trapped by rigid old patterns. They learn not to hastily label events as good or bad, but to observe things as they are, then respond in line with reason and values. Over time, this leads to a stable, composed way of living and a stronger ability to adapt to unexpected change. Those who can reframe are not only less wounded by circumstances, but also become a source of calm energy for others, because they respond from intention, not emotion. Ultimately, reframing is the process of reclaiming authorship over one's experience. Instead of letting reality define their emotions and actions, they redefine reality in a way that helps them live with greater reason, composure, and strength. It is not a single decision, but a thinking habit, one that must be trained consistently, from life's smallest disruptions to its greatest upheavals. 5. Emotional discipline, rising above inner weakness. Emotion is an inseparable part of the human experience. Joy, sorrow, anger, fear, envy, all are natural responses to life's unfolding events. However, when emotion excessively governs behavior and thought, people easily fall into a state of impulsivity, losing control and acting against their core values. This is why Stoic philosophy places great emphasis on cultivating emotional discipline, not to eliminate emotion, but to anchor behavior in reason. The Stoic sees emotion as a signal, a message from the inner world, not as a command to be obeyed immediately. When someone feels anger, it does not mean they must yell, criticize, or retaliate. Emotion merely reflects a transient state of a perception, and that state can shift if it is properly observed and processed. Emotional discipline is the ability to recognize what one is feeling, understand its deeper roots, and choose a response aligned with reason rather than reaction. This process does not come from instinct. It is the result of persistent training. Just as muscles need time to grow through physical exercise, mental strength must be developed through intentional action, especially in difficult moments when emotions surge with intensity. The Stoic cultivates emotional discipline by deliberately confronting discomfort. They do not seek a life of perfect ease, but actively create challenges to train endurance, self-control, and rational response. Fasting, cold showers, waking early, or minimizing comforts are not acts of asceticism, but exercises in fortitude, shaping resilience against temptations and negative emotions like laziness, desire, or siege. Emotional discipline also reveals itself in the ability to delay reaction. When something provoking happens, instinct urges us to respond instantly, to strike back, to defend, to prove something. But the disciplined mind doesn't act at once. It creates space between emotion and behavior. In that space, it re-examines the situation, weighs the consequences, and considers what serves long-term well-being. That pause is not avoidance. It is evidence of self-mastery. In addition, the Stoic uses tools like inner journaling to record emotions, actions, and progress. Writing things down helps them detect recurring emotional patterns, identify weaknesses in self-regulation, and to set clearer goals for improvement. The journal is not merely a log. It is a mirror, reflecting emotional growth each day. Another key aspect of emotional discipline is freedom from dependence on external validation. People often feel wounded by criticism or unrecognized worth, yet the Stoic trains not to let praise or blame govern their mood. They learn to value themselves through actions, principles, and inner truth, not through others' reactions or judgments. The ability to separate self-worth from emotions triggered by others is a clear sign of mental fortitude. Emotional discipline is also bound to patience. In a world addicted to instant gratification, from fast food to fast entertainment, and instant responses is the ability to wait, endurance, and pursue long-term goals becomes profoundly valuable. The Stoic trains patience not only with circumstances, but with their own process of inner growth. They do not expect perfection overnight, but they always move forward. Despite setbacks, overcoming inner weakness does not come from denying emotion, but from transforming it into fuel for growth. Anger can become a force for defending justice. If properly directed, fear can serve as a cue to prepare more carefully. If approached with reason, sorrow can offer space for reflection and course correction. If met with honesty, in the end, one who has emotional discipline is not someone who never feels hurt or confused, but someone who does not let those emotions distort their behavior or betray their values. They do not run from emotion, but learn to coexist with it, with control, awareness, and resolve. Thus, they can stand firm in the midst of chaos, continuing on without falling to the storm of feeling. 6. The limits of control and the liberation from anxiety. One of the most central and striking principles of Stoic philosophy is the concept of two domains of reality: the things we can control and the things entirely beyond our control. Drawing a clear line between these two realms forms the foundation of inner peace and is the first step toward freeing ourselves from the grip of anxiety. According to Stoic thinkers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, we do not control the external world, including the weather, the behavior of others, the outcomes of events, or even our reputation and health. These factors, though deeply impactful, lie outside the scope of absolute personal influence. What we do control, they argue, are our thoughts, perceptions, choice, and actions. It is the confusion between these two domains that lies at the root of much of our tension, fear, and anxiety in life. When a person tries to control what is uncontrollable, such as how others think of them or the outcome of an unfinished effort, they place themselves in conflict with reality, and each time reality falls short of expectation, they experience frustration, anger, or despair. In contrast, by clearly understanding and accepting the limits of control, one can direct their full energy toward what truly belongs to them. Take, for example, relationships. A person may act with kindness, sincerity, and fairness, but they cannot guarantee the same in return. If they evaluate the success of the relationship based on the other's response, instead of on the virtue of their own conduct, they will live in constant anxiety and insecurity. However, if they understand that their kindness is within their control, while the other's reaction is not, they gain the power to remain steady even in the face of rejection or misunderstanding. The same applies to work or study. A person can plan carefully, strive with diligence, and bring their full ability to the task. But the final outcome, whether success or failure, selection or rejection, is often shaped by external factors. Those who grasp the limits of control do not allow outcomes to define their worth. They focus instead on the processes, their actions, and their working attitude, what belongs to them, And through that, they maintain consistency, unaffected by external fluctuations. Accepting what lies beyond our control is not resignation or passivity. It demands an active, disciplined spirit, especially in managing our internal response. The Stoic trains this not to suppress feeling, but to prevent negative emotion from ruling life. By recognizing the boundary between what can be done and what must be let go, they free themselves from unnecessary pressure and create space for calm, clarity, and right action. In everyday life, this principle can be applied in the smallest things. When it rains, instead of complaining, we adjust our plans. When caught in traffic, instead of getting angry, we use the time to listen to a podcast, reflect, or simply breathe deeply. When criticized, instead of reacting with rage, we can choose to listen, respond calmly, or say nothing at all. In every situation, the common thread is the shift from external to internal focus, from what we cannot control to what is fully ours. Living by the principle of control also releases us from the pressure of managing outcomes, thereby reducing fear of failure. Many hesitate to act because they fear the result won't match expectations. But if they understand that effort is the only thing truly within their grasp, they will act with greater ease, honest, and courage. They do the right thing, not because success is guaranteed, but because it aligns with their values. Psychologically, letting go of control over the external world is an act of liberation. It removes us from the constant battle against reality. When we stop forcing things to go our way, we live in greater harmony with life, accepting things as they are and adapting ourselves wisely, instead of trying to reshape the world around our desires. In the end, the limits of control are not limits on our power, but boundaries that define where our true strength lies. When we know what is ours and what is, we not only lessen anxiety, but live with more depth, clarity, and freedom. This is the foundation for building an unshakable inner life, despite the chaos and change of the world outside. 7. Building an inner compass. Values as a guide through chaos. In the modern world, people live amid a flood of information, pressure, and overlapping choice. Systems of belief, social opinions, and cultural values shift constantly with time, geography, and circumstance. In such a context, if one lacks a firm inner foundation, they will easily be swept away by public opinion, external influence, and fleeting emotion. That is why the Stoic philosophy emphasizes the creation of an inner compass, a clear, consistent set of personal values that can guide behavior in all circumstances. The inner compass is not a rigid list of rules, but a set of core values one commits to living by. For the Stoic, these values include wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These are not abstract moral ideals, but practical principles that can be applied to even the smallest actions of a daily life. Having a clear value system helps one make decisions quickly and accurately, especially in emotionally charged or difficult situations. When insulted, instead of reacting in anger, the person guided by an inner compass will ask, does this response violate my dignity or my values? When faced with an important decision, they are not distracted by short-term gain, but choose based on principles they believe in, aligned with who they want to become. The Stoic does not allow the outside world to define who they are. They do not measure their worth by kisra, wealth, or the opinions of others. They set their own internal standards, and it is these standards that keep them steady in the face of judgment, criticism, or misunderstanding. Someone who holds justice as a core value will not be easily tempted into questionable behavior, even when it brings reward. One who chooses wisdom as their guide will not act out of impulse, but will investigate, reflect, and self-examine before taking action. The inner compass also functions as a directional mechanism during times of confusion or disorientation, when everything around them unravels, when plans collapse, when failure strikes. People often feel lost and veer from their path, but with a guiding value system already in place, one can realign themselves, reorient, and move forward with clarity. This is especially useful during life transitions, career shifts, personal crises, or unexpected upheaval. Personal values are not fixed forever, but neither should they bend to passing emotions or social trends. The Stoic encourages regular examination and reflection of one's value system to ensure it is not being shaped by desire, illusion, or the influence of others. Asking oneself, am I living in alignment with what I claim to value? Is there something I'm compromising or ignoring? Does this value still reflect who I am becoming? Allows the value system to become more authentic and useful over time. Living true to personal values also grants greater freedom in choice, since one is no longer swayed by the need to please others or chase goals they do not truly believe in. Once it is clear what matters most, a person can more easily reject what doesn't fit, avoid internal conflict, and reduce the pressure to become someone they're not. In daily practice, the Stoic often begins the morning by setting an intention to live by their values. Today, I will be patient and just in speech. At the end of the day, they reflect, did I remain calm when insulted? Was I fair in my treatment of others? These questions help maintain the connection between thought and action, between values and lived experience. Maintaining an inner compass also means taking full personal responsibility. Once values are clearly chosen, one can no longer blame circumstances or others for their missteps. Instead of offering excuses, they choose to correct, to learn, and to recommit to living closer to what they know is right. In short, establishing and maintaining a clear set of personal values is a core act that allows one to remain grounded amid chaos. In Stoic philosophy, this is a vital key to maintaining stability, autonomy, and virtue, regardless of how the outside world may shift. When all external standards become blurred, when the noise of society becomes overwhelming, it is the inner compass that helps us keep walking steadily and with unwearying clarity. 8. Mastering attention, the silent weapon of freedom. In the modern world, one of the most precious resources we possess is not time, money, or energy, but attention. Whatever captures our attention holds the power to shape our thoughts, emotions, and actions. That is why Stoic philosophy places central importance on mastering attention as a core skill for preserving spiritual freedom and maintaining coherence in one's inner life. Attention is the gateway to consciousness. Everything we experience, emotion, thought, action, begins at this point of origin. When attention is unconsciously hijacked by external stimuli, such as news, social media, rumors, or trivial daily conflicts, the mind becomes scattered, misdirected, and easily manipulated. Conversely, when we deliberately choose where to place our attention, we protect our mental state, sustain clarity, and act in alignment with personal values. Stoic philosophy emphasizes that we cannot fully control what happens in the world around us, but we can control what we focus on. When a negative event occurs, someone who lacks control over their attention becomes trapped in negative emotions, consumed by anger or regret. In contrast, one who manages their attention understands that what we choose to focus on determines the quality of our inner experience, not the event itself. A common example is facing an insult. If attention immediately fixates on the feeling of hurt, we are likely to react defensively or lash out. But if attention shifts to observing our own reaction or considering what may have led the other person to act that way, the emotion loses its grip. Reason then has room to intervene, and our actions are based on understanding rather than impulse. The Stoics also warn of the subtle thieves of attention, especially in today's information-saturated environment. The constant presence of social media, advertising, sensational news, and a fast-paced lifestyle gradually erodes our capacity for deep focus. The result is fragmented thought, fluctuating emotions, and a loss of direction. In such a setting, the ability to control one's attention is not merely a life skill. It becomes a form of self-defense against the intrusion of external chaos. To train attention, the Stoic employs various practices. One of the most basic is focusing only on what is within our control. When facing difficulty, they don't allow the mind to drift into anxious hypotheticals or pessimistic scenarios. Instead, they bring attention back to the present moment and the concrete actions that can be taken now. This reduces anxiety and enhances effective action. In addition, the Stoic practices intentional mindfulness. In any activity, eating, walking, conversing, or working, they train themselves to be fully present. They avoid multitasking or letting the mind leap unconsciously from thought to thought. As a result, they cultivate a deeper awareness of themselves and their surroundings, an essential condition for maintaining composure and acting wisely. The ability to choose where attention goes also protects mental energy. When attention is drained by trivial matters, unnecessary arguments, or toxic news, the mind becomes heavy and struggles to focus on what truly matters. By proactively limiting distractions, one preserves clarity of thought and channels attention toward constructive values. Sustaining attention on what is meaningful also forms the foundation for developing Stoic virtues such as patience, perseverance, and temperance. Those who regularly train their focus are less swayed by fleeting desires, less influenced by social judgment, and more capable of making choices aligned with long-term goals. In contrast, those with scattered awareness tend to act impulsively, chase short-term gratification, and be easily governed by emotion. Ultimately, in a world filled with noise and distraction, mastering attention is not just a skill, it is a strategic way of living. True freedom, according to Stoic philosophy, does not come from controlling others or circumstances, but from the ability to govern where the mind chooses to rest. The one who masters attention masters perception, emotion, and action, and that is the path to self-mastery, wisdom, and inner peace. 9. The view from above. Seeing through the eyes of wisdom. In daily life, people are often caught up in personal concerns, conflict with coworkers, financial pressure, anxiety about the future, feelings of hurt or disappointment caused by others. When viewed through a narrow lens, these experiences can easily trap a person into negativity, stress, anger, or self-doubt. Stoic philosophy offers a powerful mental tool to break free from that cycle. The practice of the view from above. This is a meditative visualization technique used to expand perspective, allowing one to momentarily step outside themselves and observe life from a wider distance, in both space and meaning. Rather than viewing problems from the standpoint of the individual ego, the Stoic practitioner imagines themselves from high above, then zooms out gradually to the city, the nation, the planet, and eventually the cosmos. In the vast context of this universal scale, problems that once seemed urgent or overwhelming begin to shrink, revealed as temporary, minor, and unworthy of disturbing inner calm. This technique, helps loosen attachment to the self, one of the core sources of human suffering. When overly fixated on the ego, people assume they are the center of everything, that events are directed at or revolve around them. But from a cosmic viewpoint, personal events are minuscule fragments in the flow of time and space. Being criticized, failing a project, or missing an opportunity all become far less significant when seen within the whole. The view from above is not meant to dismiss what we're going through, but to create mental distance, where reason can intervene before emotion takes hold. In moments of anger, sadness, or confusion, pausing to imagine oneself from above helps slow the emotional tide and reminds us that everything is part of a larger whole. This restores balance, allowing for a more rational and intentional response. This practice also cultivates humility, a core Stoic virtue. When confronted with the vastness of the universe, of history, of billions of human lives coexisting, one realizes they are neither central nor singular. Personal triumphs or failures, while important in the moment, are but ripples on the surface of time. Such humility does not diminish individual worth, but helps one live more sincerely, deeply, and free from self-imposed pressure. Moreover, seeing from a broader vantage point strengthens empathy and connection. Stepping out of one's own narrow frame, it becomes easier to recognize that others too are facing hidden struggles. Hurtful actions may arise from pain, ignorance, or fear. Recognizing this reduces anger and opens the door to respond with compassion, calm, and constructive presence. In everyday practice, this technique can be applied in various ways. Some begin their morning with a visualization meditation, imagining themselves sitting in their room, then zooming out through each layer: the building, neighborhood, city, country, and the planet. Others use it on the spot. When strong emotion arises, they pause and imagine observing themselves from above, like an outsider witnessing their own behavior. This takes only minutes, yet powerfully shifts awareness and conduct. The view from above also reveals the impermanence of all things. When we look at life from a wide enough angle, what once brought deep pain may appear as a brief chapter in a longer story. That event doesn't define us, nor does it hold eternal power. This awareness lightens the heart, reduces attachment to the past, and fuels a renewed willingness to move forward with openness. In essence, the view from above is a simple but strategic Stoic tool. It requires no complex technique, only the intention of the mind. When practiced regularly, it becomes a reflex of wisdom, allowing one to rise above temporary entanglements and see everything with greater depth, clarity, and insight. And in that elevated vision, one not only finds peace, but also discovers a clearer, more virtuous, and more human way to act. 10. Daily reflection, the mirror of self-mastery. In Stoic philosophy, self-mastery is not merely the ability to control momentary emotions, but the result of continuous observation and adjustment of oneself. One of the foundational methods to cultivate such mastery is daily reflection, a habit practiced regularly by many Stoic philosophers, most notably Marcus Aurelius, who often recorded his thoughts and assessed his actions each night before sleep. Reflection is the act of turning inward to examine how we lived the day, not to judge or praise ourselves, but to honestly assess whether our actions aligned with the values we have chosen. It is an essential step for personal growth, because without reflection, we are likely to repeat negative behaviors without awareness or make excuses to avoid personal responsibility. This process requires no special tools, but it demands sincerity and discipline. At the end of each day, The practitioner poses specific questions. How did I conduct myself today? Did I react impulsively in any situation? Did I miss an opportunity to act with reason? Is there anything I regret or feel proud of? These questions are not meant to criticize, but to observe behavior objectively in order to improve over time. In daily life, people often fall into patterns of automatic reaction, acting out of habit, momentary emotion, or social pressure without a system to pause and review. Those reactions gradually solidify into fixed patterns, reinforcing negative tendencies and eroding personal virtue. Reflection is the means to break that cycle, to bring behavior into the light of reason, to see it from an objective standpoint, and to ask, could I do better next time? Journaling is a common form of reflection among Stoics. On those pages, there is no room for embellishment or excuse. The goal is not storytelling or entertainment, but to create an honest mirror where the writer confronts themselves, not as a victim of circumstance, but as one responsible for how they have lived. Over time, these writings form a clear picture of inner growth, tracking progress, even if modest, day by day. One of the greatest benefits of daily reflection is the reinforcement of personal values. Each time we examine our behavior through the lens of wisdom and virtue, we are reminded of what truly matters: integrity, patience, honesty, and accountability. These values are no longer abstract ideals. They are tested and expressed through the specific moments of each day. Through reflection, the gap between ideal and action gradually narrows. Daily reflections also serves as an early warning system. It helps the practitioner detect emerging bad habits, careless words, or behaviors that drift from the ethical path. Without reflection, small missteps can be overlooked, accumulating over time and leading to moral decline. But when examined daily, those errors become lessons, and from them, we gain the opportunity to correct, improve, and try again. Beyond correcting faults, reflection also strengthens what is good. Acknowledging moments when we acted well, remained composed, or chose reason over emotion reinforces inner confidence. True confidence does not come from others' praise, but from knowing we are making progress, living more closely to the values we've chosen. The Stoic does not seek perfection. They accept that we are finite beings who will continue to err, but they believe each mistake carries the seed of growth if we have the courage to face it. And daily reflection is the means to do just that, not with judgment, not with avoidance, but with clear observation and deeper self-understanding. In summary, daily reflection is an indispensable practice on the path of inner development. It is a tool to maintain self-control, integrity, and awareness in a world that constantly shifts. Like a mirror we consult each day, reflection helps us adjust our actions, stay aligned with our purpose, and continue forward, not through giant leaps, but through small, steady, and conscious steps. What I've learned most deeply from Stoicism isn't lofty philosophical concepts, but the ability to turn theory into tangible behavior each day. There's one principle I carry with me. Every situation, no matter how small or large, is an opportunity to practice virtue. When I feel anger, I no longer let myself react as I once did. Instead, I've learned to pause for a few seconds and ask myself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Most of the time, the answer doesn't come from others, but from within. Fatigue, a bruised ego, or unrealistic expectations. Recognizing that is the first step to controlling my actions. I've also started journaling every evening. Nothing elaborate, just a few lines to reflect. How did I conduct myself today? What am I proud of? What would I do differently if I had the chance? This writing not only helps me learn from my mistakes, but also strengthens my gratitude for what I did well. Above all, I've realized no one can live Stoicism for you. No book, no video can replace the work of self-observation, self-correction, and daily discipline, starting with the smallest details of everyday life. If you find value in this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content. That's how you help spread a way of living that is steady and deep in a world growing ever more turbulent. And finally, remember, the greatest strength doesn't lie in controlling the world, but in mastering yourself. One thought, one response, one moment at a time. I'll see you in the next video.